Tonight, you'll be dozing off from the back seat of your parents' car, softly cradled by the gentle hum of the engine as it travels homeward late at night along a country highway. Imagine you are sitting in the back seat with your head nestled into a cozy pillow propped against the window. You are gazing out at the moonlit countryside, and on your face is a soft and secret smile. It's late Friday night after playing in the pep band at your brother's basketball game far from home. Your kid sister has nodded off already. She's laying across the wide seat with her head resting softly in your lap. You are tired too after a long week of high school and homework, but you're also full of wonder, and that smile on your face is perfectly concealed in the shadows, only illuminated sporadically by the flickering flashes of light cast from the headlights of oncoming cars. You rest your forehead against the cool glass of the window. Every now and then, a distant farmhouse light appears, towering like a lighthouse in the dark, casting bright beams across the endless, waterless ocean of a prairie. Now, slowly we'll begin to relax. First, with eyes closed, just become aware of your breathing, feeling your chest gently rise and fall again. Next, we'll try taking a few deeper breaths, filling our lungs with air, holding it, and then gently exhaling and letting it all go. Ready? Inhale deeply, hold for 3, 2, 1, and then exhale. One more time. Breathe in deeply, hold for 3, 2, 1, and then exhale. And try thinking to yourself, as I sit here in the back seat, I can feel gravity's pull tugging me gently back towards Earth. With every exhale, I can feel the weight of the day slipping away. I can feel my feet, my ankles, calves, knees, and my legs, each part of me relaxing deeper and becoming heavier and more relaxed. Up in the front seat, your parents recap and relive the big game. They talk of jump shots and fouls, rebounds and timeouts. You close your eyes, but when you picture the crowded gymnasium, you remember something much sweeter than basketball. Your mind drifts back, but now the memory of the night is soothing and hypnotic, somehow quieter, as if it all played out in slow motion. Sneakers squeaking on the hardwood floor, cheers blasting out from spirit sections choreographed by cheerleaders and mascots. The aroma of popcorn and hot dogs snaking its way from concessions all the way through the hot air, above the teams and players and referees, and then high into the packed stands where you and the band played and cheered and sang. You quietly reflect on how unexpected your first love appeared in your young life. It feels as if the universe brought it to you slowly, and yet, in the end, also unexpectedly in a flash. Now let's try taking a few more deep breaths. Ready? Breathe in deeply. Hold for 3, 2, 1, and then exhale. Try continuing on your own, and while doing this, try thinking to yourself, as I sit here, my whole body feels heavy and relaxed. With every exhale, I can feel gravity pulling me back towards Earth gently. I can feel my head, my shoulders, my neck becoming relaxed and at ease. And my legs are heavy and at peace with gravity's pull. Now my whole body, my legs and feet, my arms and hands, my torso, my head and neck and shoulders, my whole body is completely at peace, relaxed, and at ease. For weeks and weeks at band practice and at games, you had played right there next to each other, bumping elbows, close enough to catch quick flashes of fragrances, close enough for smiles, quick glances, silly and innocent flirtations without considering really when and where or if you might actually ever kiss. And then, unexpectedly, tonight, it just happened. while the whole gymnasium was on its feet, the whole world preoccupied with some monumental moment of a basketball game. It just happened right there in the minuscule universe between the two of you. When you think about it now, falling in love was a lot like those farmhouse lights out there in the darkness. Everything approached so slowly at first, off in the distance, hardly moving at all. And then, love gained momentum and approached you carefully and timidly, getting closer and closer, and before you knew it, before you both knew it, true love had rushed up on you in a heartbeat, irresistible and suddenly undeniable. You smile now, thinking how you had always imagined your first kiss would happen somewhere private and hidden, and yet, in the end, yours was out in the open and in front of hundreds of people who never even saw it. As your parents dial in the AM radio, you finally close your eyes and lean back. Loss of the steamship Titanic. Report of a formal investigation into the circumstances attending the foundering on April 15, 1912, of the British steamship Titanic of Liverpool after striking ice in or near latitude 41 degrees 46 minutes north, longitude 50 degrees 14 minutes west, North Atlantic Ocean, whereby loss of life ensued. Section 7. Finding of the Court. It is now convenient to answer the 26 questions submitted by the Board of Trade. 1. When the Titanic left Queenstown on or about April 11th last? A. What was the total number of persons employed in any capacity on board her, and what were their respective ratings? B. What was the total number of her passengers, distinguishing sexes and classes and discriminating between adults and children? Answer. A. The total number of persons employed in any capacity on board the Titanic was 885. The respective ratings of these persons were as follows: Deck Department 66, Engine Department 325, Victualling Department 494. Note, the 8 bandsmen are not included in this number as their names appear in the second-class passenger list. B. The total number of passengers was 1,316. Of these, first class 180 male, 145 female, 325 total. Second class 179 male, 106 female, 285 total. Third class 510 male, 196 female, 706 total. Of the above, 6 children were in the first class, 24 in the second class, and 79 in the third class. Total 109. 2. Before leaving Queenstown on or about April 11th last, did the Titanic comply with the requirements of the Merchant Shipping Acts 1894 to 1906 and the rules and regulations made thereunder with regard to the safety and otherwise of passenger steamers and emigrant ships? Answer: yes. 3. In the actual design and construction of the Titanic, what special provisions were made for the safety of the vessel and the lives of those on board in the event of collisions and other casualties? Answer: these have been already described. 4. A. Was the Titanic sufficiently and efficiently officered and manned? B. Were the watches of the officers and crew usual and proper? C. Was the Titanic supplied with proper charts? Answer: A. Yes. B. Yes. C. Yes. 5. A. What was the number of the boats of any kind aboard the Titanic? B. Were the arrangements for manning and launching the boats on board the Titanic in case of emergency proper and sufficient? C. Had a boat drill been held on board, and if so, when? D. What was the carrying capacity of the respective boats? Answer: A. 2 emergency boats, 14 lifeboats, 4 Engelhard boats. B. No, but see page 38. C. No. D. The carrying capacity of the 2 emergency boats was for 80 persons. 14 lifeboats was for 910 persons. 4 Engelhard boats was for 188 persons, or a total of 1,178 persons. 6. A. What installations for receiving and transmitting messages by wireless telegraphy were on board the Titanic? B. How many operators were employed on working such installations? C. Were the installations in good and effective working order? And were the number of operators sufficient to enable messages to be received and transmitted continuously by day and night? Answer: A. A Marconi 5 kilowatt motor generator with 2 complete sets of apparatus supplied from the ship's dynamos, with an independent storage battery and coil for emergency, was fitted in a house on the boat deck. B. 2. C. Yes. 7. A. At or prior to the sailing of the Titanic, what, if any, instructions as to navigation were given to the master or known by him to apply to her voyage? B. Were such instructions, if any, safe, proper, and adequate, having regard to the time of year and dangers likely to be encountered during the voyage? Answer: A. No special instructions were given, but he had general instructions contained in the Book of Rules and Regulations supplied by the company. See page 24. B. Yes, but having regard to subsequent events, they would have been better if a reference had been made to the course to be adopted in the event of reaching the region of ice. 8. A. What was in fact the track taken by the Titanic in crossing the Atlantic Ocean? B. Did she keep to the track usually followed by liners on voyages from the United Kingdom to New York in the month of April? C. Are such tracks safe tracks at that time of the year? D. Had the master any, and if so, what discretion as regards the track to be taken? Answer: A. The outward southern track from Queenstown to New York usually followed in April by large steam vessels. See page 24. B. Yes, with the exception that instead of altering her course on approaching the position 42 degrees north, 47 degrees west, she stood on her previous course for some 10 miles farther southwest, turning to south 86 degrees west, true at 5:50 p.m. C. The outward and homeward bound southern tracks were decided on as the outcome of many years' experience of the normal movement of ice. They were reasonably safe tracks for the time of year, provided, of course, that great caution and vigilance when crossing the ice region were observed. D. Yes. Captain Smith was not fettered by any orders to remain on the track should information as to the position of ice make it, in his opinion, undesirable to adhere to it. The fact, however, of lane routes having been laid down for the common safety of all would necessarily influence him to keep on, or very near, the accepted route, unless circumstances as indicated above should induce him to deviate largely from it. 9. A. After leaving Queenstown on or about the 11th of April last, did information reach the Titanic by wireless messages or otherwise by signals of the existence of ice in certain latitudes? B. If so, what were such messages or signals, and when were they received? And in what position or positions was the ice reported to be? And was the ice reported in or near the track actually being followed by the Titanic? C. Was her course altered in consequence of receiving such information, and if so, in what way? D. What replies to such messages or signals did the Titanic send, and at what times? Answer: A. Yes. B. See particulars of ice messages already set out, pages 26 through 28. C. No. Her course was altered as herein before described, but not in consequence of the information received as to ice. D. The material answers were: at 12:55 p.m. steamship Titanic to Commander Baltic. Thanks for your message and good wishes. Had fine weather since leaving. Smith. At 1:26 p.m. steamship Titanic to Captain Coronia. Thanks for message and information. Have had variable weather throughout. Smith. 10. A. If at the times referred to in the last preceding question or later the Titanic was warned of or had reason to suppose she would encounter ice, at what time might she have reasonably expected to encounter it? B. Was a good and proper lookout for ice kept on board? C. Were any, and if so, what, directions given to vary the speed? If so, were they carried out? Answer: A. At, or even before, 9:30 p.m. ship's time, on the night of the disaster. B. No. The men in the crow's nest were warned at 9:30 p.m. to keep a sharp lookout for ice. The officer of the watch was then aware that he had reached the reported ice region, and so also was the officer who relieved him at 10 p.m. Without implying that those actually on duty were not keeping a good lookout in view of the night being moonless, there being no wind and perhaps very little swell, and especially in view of the high speed at which the vessel was running, it is not considered that the lookout was sufficient. An extra lookout should, under the circumstances, have been placed at the stem head, and a sharp lookout should have been kept from both sides of the bridge by an officer. C. No directions were given to reduce speed. 11. A. Were binoculars provided for and used by the lookout men? B. Is the use of them necessary or usual in such circumstances? C. Had the Titanic the means of throwing searchlights around her? D. If so, did she make use of them to discover ice? E. Should searchlights have been provided and used? Answer: A. No. B. No. C. No. D. No. E. No. But searchlights may at times be of service. The evidence before the court does not allow of a more precise answer. 12. A. What other precautions were taken by the Titanic in anticipation of meeting ice? B. Were they such as are usually adopted by vessels being navigated in waters where ice may be expected to be encountered? Answer: A. Special orders were given to the men in the crow's nest to keep a sharp lookout for ice, particularly small ice and growlers. The fore-scuttle hatch was closed to keep everything dark before the bridge. B. Yes, though there is evidence to show that some masters would have placed a lookout at the stem head of the ship. 13. A. Was ice seen and reported by anybody on board the Titanic before the casualty occurred? B. If so, what measures were taken by the officer on watch to avoid it? C. Were they proper measures and were they promptly taken? Answer: A. Yes, immediately before the collision. B. The helm was put hard a starboard and the engines were stopped and put full speed astern. C. Yes. 14. A. What was the speed of the Titanic shortly before and at the moment of the casualty? B. Was such speed excessive under the circumstances? Answer: A. About 22 knots. B. Yes, 15. A. What was the nature of the casualty which happened to the Titanic at or about 11:45 p.m. on April 14th last? B. In what latitude and longitude did the casualty occur? Answer: A. A collision with an iceberg which pierced the starboard side of the vessel in several places below the waterline between the forepeak tank and number 4 boiler room. B. In latitude 41 degrees 46 minutes north, longitude 50 degrees 14 minutes west. 16. A. What steps were taken immediately on the happening of the casualty? B. How long after the casualty was its seriousness realized by those in charge of the vessel? C. What steps were then taken? D. What endeavors were made to save the lives of those on board and to prevent the vessel from sinking? Answer: A. The 12 watertight doors in the engine and boiler rooms were closed from the bridge. Some of the boiler fires were drawn and the bilge pumps abaft number 6 boiler room were started. B. About 15 to 20 minutes. C and D. The boats were ordered to be cleared away. The passengers were roused and orders given to get them on deck, and life belts were served out. Some of the watertight doors, other than those in the boiler and engine rooms, were closed. Marconigrams were sent out asking for help. Distress signals, rockets, were fired, and attempts were made to call up by Morse a ship whose lights were seen. 18 of the boats were swung out and lowered, and the remaining 2 floated off the ship and were subsequently utilized as rafts. 17. Was proper discipline maintained on board after the casualty occurred? Answer: yes. 18. A. What messages for assistance were sent by the Titanic after the casualty and at what times, respectively? B. What messages were received by her in response and at what times, respectively? C. By what vessels were the messages that were sent by the Titanic received? And from what vessels did she receive answers? D. What vessels other than the Titanic sent or received messages at or shortly after the casualty in connection with such casualty? E. What were the vessels that sent or received such messages? F. Were any vessels prevented from going to the assistance of the Titanic or her boats owing to messages received from the Titanic or owing to any erroneous messages being sent or received? G. In regard to such erroneous messages, from what vessels were they sent and by what vessels were they received, and at what times, respectively? A, B, C, D, and E are answered together. F. Several vessels did not go owing to their distance. G. There were no erroneous messages. 10:25 p.m. New York time, 12:15 a.m. Titanic time. La Provence receives Titanic distress signals. Mount Temple heard Titanic sending CQD, says require assistance, gives position. Cannot hear me. Advise my captain his position 41.46 north, 50.24 west. Cape Race hears Titanic giving position on CQD 41.44 north, 50.24 west. 10:28 p.m. New York time, 12:18 a.m. Titanic time. Ipiranga hears CQD from Titanic. Titanic gives CQD here. Position 41.44 north, 50.24 west. Require assistance. Calls about 10 times. 10:35 p.m. New York time, 12:25 a.m. Titanic time. CQD call received from Titanic by Carpathia. Titanic said, "Come at once. We have struck a berg. It's a CQD. OM. Position 41.46 north, 50.14 west. Cape Race hears MGY. Titanic give corrected position 41.46 north, 50.14 west. Calling him. No answer. 10:36 p.m. New York time, 12:25 a.m. Titanic time. MGY, Titanic, says CQD. Here corrected position 41.46 north, 50.14 west. Require immediate assistance. We have collision with iceberg, sinking. Can nothing hear for noise of steam. Sent about 15 to 20 times to Ipiranga. 10:37 p.m. New York time, 12:27 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic sends following. I require assistance immediately. Struck by iceberg in 41.46 north, 50.14 west. 10:40 p.m. New York time, 12:30 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic gives his position to Frankfurt and says, "Tell your captain to come to our help. We are on the ice." Coronia sent CQ message to MBC, Baltic, and CQD. MGY, Titanic struck iceberg. Require immediate assistance. Mount Temple hears MGY, Titanic, still calling CQD. Our captain reverses ship. We are about 50 miles off. 10:46 p.m. New York time, 12:36 a.m. Titanic time. DKF, Prince Friedrich Wilhelm, calls MGY, Titanic, and gives position at 12 a.m. 39.47 north, 50.10 west. MGY, Titanic, says, "Are you coming to our?" DFT, Frankfurt, says, "What is the matter with you?" MGY, Titanic, "We have collision with iceberg. Sinking. Please tell captain to come." DFT, Frankfurt, says, "Okay, we'll tell." 10:48 p.m. New York time, 12:38 a.m. Titanic time. Mount Temple hears Frankfurt give MGY, Titanic, his position, 39.47 north, 52.10 west. 10:55 p.m. New York time, 12:45 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic calls Olympic SOS. 11 p.m. New York time, 12:50 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic calls CQD and says, "I require immediate assistance, position 41.46 north, 50.14 west, received by Celtic." 11:03 p.m. New York time, 12:53 a.m. Titanic time, Coronia to MBC, Baltic, and SOS, MGY, Titanic, CQD, in 41.46 north, 50.14 west, wants immediate assistance. 11:10 p.m. New York time, 1 a.m. Titanic time. MGY gives distress signal. DDC replies. MGY's position 41.46 north, 50.14 west. Assistance from DDC not necessary, as MKC shortly afterwards answers distress call. Titanic replies to Olympic and gives his position as 41.46 north, 50.14 west, and says, "We have struck an iceberg." 11:12 p.m. New York time, 1:02 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic calls Asian and said, "Want immediate assistance?" Asian answered at once and received Titanic's position as 41.46 north, 50.14 west, which he immediately takes to the bridge. Captain instructs operator to have Titanic's position repeated. Virginian calls Titanic but gets no response. Cape Race tells Virginian to report to his captain the Titanic has struck iceberg and requires immediate assistance. 11:20 p.m. New York time, 1:10 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic to MKC, Olympic. We are in collision with berg, sinking head down, 41.46 north, 50.14 west. Come soon as possible. Titanic to MKC, Olympic. Captain says, "Get your boats ready. What is your position?" 11:25 p.m. New York time, 1:15 a.m. Titanic time. Baltic to Coronia. Please tell Titanic we are making toward her. 11:30 p.m. New York time, 1:20 a.m. Titanic time. Virginian hears MCE, Cape Race, inform MGY, Titanic, that we are going to his assistance, our position 170 miles north of Titanic. 11:35 p.m. New York time, 1:25 a.m. Titanic time. Coronia tells Titanic, Baltic coming to your assistance. Olympic sends position to Titanic 4:24 a.m. GMT. 40.52 north, 61.18 west. Are you steering southerly to meet us? Titanic replies, we are putting the women off in the boats. Titanic and Olympic work together. 11:37 p.m. New York time. 1:27 a.m. Titanic time. MGY, Titanic says, we are putting the women off in the boats. 11:40 p.m. New York time. 1:30 a.m. Titanic time. Titanic tells Olympic, we are putting passengers off in small boats. 11:45 p.m. New York time. 1:35 a.m. Titanic time. Olympic asks Titanic what weather he had. Titanic replies, clear and calm. Baltic hears Titanic say engine room getting flooded. Mount Temple hears DFT. Frankfurt asks, are there any boats around you already? No reply. 11:47 p.m. New York time. 1:37 a.m. Titanic time. Baltic tells Titanic, we are rushing to you. 11:50 p.m. New York time. 1:40 a.m. Titanic time. Olympic to Titanic. Am lighting up all possible boilers as fast as can. Cape Race says to Virginian, please tell your captain this. The Olympic is making all speed for Titanic, but his Olympic's position is 40.32 north, 61.18 west. You are much nearer to Titanic. The Titanic is already putting women off in the boats, and he says the weather there is calm and clear. The Olympic is the only ship we have heard say, going to the assistance of the Titanic. The others must be a long way from the Titanic. 11:55 p.m. New York time, 1:45 a.m. Titanic time. Last signals heard from Titanic by Carpathia, engine room full up to boilers. Mount Temple hears DFT, Frankfurt calling MGY, Titanic. No reply. 11:57 p.m. New York time, 1:47 a.m. Titanic time. Coronia hears MGY, Titanic, though signals unreadable still. 11:58 p.m. New York time, 1:48 a.m. Titanic time. Asian heard Titanic call SOS. Asian answers Titanic but receives no answer. Midnight New York time, 1:50 a.m. Titanic time. Coronia hears Frankfurt working to Titanic. Frankfurt, according to position 172 miles from MGY, Titanic, at time first SOS sent out. 12:05 a.m. New York time, 1:55 a.m. Titanic time. Cape Race says to Virginian, we have not heard Titanic for about half an hour. His power may be gone. 12:10 a.m. New York time, 2 a.m. Titanic time. Virginian hears Titanic calling very faintly, his power being very greatly reduced. 12:20 a.m. New York time, 2:10 a.m. Titanic time. Virginian hears two V's signaled faintly in spark similar to Titanic's, probably adjusting spark. 12:27 a.m. New York time, 2:17 a.m. Titanic time. Virginian hears Titanic call CQ, but unable to read him. Titanic's signals end very abruptly as power suddenly switched off. His spark rather blurred or ragged, called MGY, Titanic, and suggested he should try emergency set, but heard no response. 12:30 a.m. New York time, 2:20 a.m. Titanic time. Olympic, his signals strong, asked him if he had heard anything about MGY, Titanic. He says, no, keeping strict watch, but hear nothing more from MGY, Titanic. No reply from him. 12:52 a.m. New York time. This was the official time the Titanic foundered 41.46 north, 50.14 west as given by the Carpathia, In message to the Olympic, about 2:20 a.m. 1:15 a.m. New York time. Virginian exchanges signals Baltic. He tries send us message for MGY, Titanic, but his signals died utterly away. 1:25 a.m. New York time. Mount Temple hears MPA. Carpathia, send if you are there, we are firing rockets. 1:35 a.m. New York time. Baltic sent one message to Virginian for Titanic. 1:40 a.m. New York time. MPA, Carpathia, calling MGY, Titanic. 1:58 a.m. New York time. SBA, Burma, thinks he hears Titanic, so sends steaming full speed for you. Shall arrive you 6 in morning. Hope you are safe. We are only 50 miles now. 2 a.m. New York time. MPA, Carpathia, calling MGY, Titanic. Have not heard Titanic since 11:50 p.m. Received from Ipiranga. 2:28 a.m. New York time. La Provence to Celtic. Nobody has heard the Titanic for about 2 hours. 3:24 a.m. New York time. SBA, Burma, says we are 30 miles southwest off Titanic. 3:36 a.m. New York time. Celtic sends message to Caronia for the Titanic. Caronia, after trying for 2 hours to get through to the Titanic, tells the Celtic impossible to clear his message to Titanic. Celtic then cancels message. 3:45 a.m. New York time. Californian exchanges signals with MLQ, Mount Temple. He gave position of Titanic. 4:10 a.m. New York time. Californian receives message from MGN, Virginian. 5:05 a.m. New York time. Baltic signals MPA, Carpathia. 5:40 a.m. New York time. Parisian hears weak signals from MPA, Carpathia, or some station saying Titanic struck iceberg. Carpathia has passengers from lifeboats. Olympic Trajan, with German oil tank in tow for Halifax, asked what news of MGY, Titanic. Sends service later saying heard MGY, Titanic, very faint weakening. Race up to 10 p.m. local time. Finished calling SOS midnight. 6:05 a.m. New York time. Parisian exchanges TRs, Virginian OK. Informed Captain Haynes what I heard passing between ships regarding Titanic, and he decided not to return as MPA, Carpathia, was there, and Californian was 50 miles astern of us, but requested me to stand by in case required. 6:45 a.m. New York time. Mount Temple hears MPA, Carpathia, report rescued 20 boatloads. 7:07 a.m. New York time. Baltic sends following to Carpathia. Can I be of any assistance to you as regards taking some of the passengers from you? Will be in position about 4:30. Let me know if you alter your position. 7:10 a.m. New York time. Baltic in communication with MPA, Carpathia. Exchange traffic regarding passengers and get instructions to proceed to Liverpool. 7:15 a.m. New York time. Baltic turns round for Liverpool, having steamed 134 miles west toward Titanic. 7:40 a.m. New York time. Mount Temple hears MPA, Carpathia, call CQ, and say, no need to STD by him, advise my captain, who has been cruising around the ice field with no result. Ship reversed. 7:45 a.m. New York time. Olympic sent message to owners New York via Sable Island saying have not communicated with Titanic since midnight. 7:55 a.m. New York time. Carpathia replies to Baltic, am proceeding to Halifax or New York full speed. You had better proceed to Liverpool, have about 800 passengers on board. 8 a.m. New York time. Carpathia to Virginian. We are leaving here with all on board about 800 passengers. Please return to your northern course. 19A. Was the apparatus for lowering the boats on the Titanic at the time of the casualty in good working order? B. Were the boats swung out, filled, lowered, or otherwise put into the water and got away under proper superintendence? C. Were the boats sent away in seaworthy condition and properly manned, equipped, and provisioned? D. Did the boats, whether those under davits or otherwise, prove to be efficient and serviceable for the purpose of saving life? Answer: A. Yes. B. Yes. C. The 14 lifeboats, 2 emergency boats, and C and D collapsible boats were sent away in a seaworthy condition, but some of them were possibly undermanned. The evidence on this point was unsatisfactory. The total number of crew taken on board the Carpathia exceeded the number which would be required for manning the boats. The collapsible boats A and B appear to have floated off the ship at the time she foundered. The necessary equipment and provisions for the boats were carried in the ship, but some of the boats nevertheless left without having their full equipment in them. D. Yes. 20. A. What was the number of A passengers, B crew taken away in each boat on leaving the vessel? B. How was this number made up, having regard to 1. Sex, 2. Class, and 3. Rating? C. How many were children and how many adults? D. Did each boat carry its full load, and if not, why not? Answer: A, B, C. It is impossible exactly to say how many persons were carried in each boat or what was their sex, class, and rating, as the totals given in evidence do not correspond with the numbers taken on board the Carpathia. The boats eventually contained in all 712 persons, made up as shown in the answer to question 21. D. No. At least 8 boats did not carry their full loads for the following reasons. 1. Many people did not realize the danger or care to leave the ship at first. 2. Some boats were ordered to be lowered with an idea of their coming around to the gangway doors to complete loading. 3. The officers were not certain of the strength and capacity of the boats in all cases, and see page 39. 21. A. How many persons on board the Titanic at the time of the casualty were ultimately rescued, and by what means? B. How many lost their lives prior to the arrival of the steamship Carpathia in New York? C. What was the number of passengers distinguishing between men and women and adults and children of the first, second, and third classes, respectively, who were saved? D. What was the number of the crew discriminating their ratings and sex that were saved? E. What is the proportion which each of these numbers bears to the corresponding total number on board immediately before the casualty? F. What reason is there for the disproportion, if any? Answer: A. 712 rescued by Carpathia from the boats. B. 1. C, D, and E are answered together. The following is a list of the saved. First class. Adult males, 57 out of 175, or 32.57%. Adult females, 140 out of 144, or 97.22%. Male children, all saved, 5. Female children, all saved, 1. Total first class saved, 203 out of 325, or 62.46%. Second class, adult males, 14 out of 168, or 8.33%. Adult females, 80 out of 93, or 86.02%. Male children, all saved, 11. Female children, all saved, 13. Total second class saved, 118 out of 285, or 41.40%. Third class, adult males, 75 out of 462, or 16.23%. Adult females, 76 out of 165, or 46.06%. Male children, 13 out of 48, or 27.08%. Female children, 14 out of 31, or 45.16%. Total third class saved, 178 out of 706, or 25.21%. Total passengers saved, 499 out of 1,316, or 37.94%. Crew saved, deck department 43 out of 66, or 65.15%. Engine room department 72 out of 325, or 22.15%. Victualling department 97 out of 494, or 19.63%, including women 20 out of 23, or 86.95%. Total crews saved 212 out of 885, or 23.95%. Total onboard saved 711 out of 2,201, or 32.30%. F. The disproportion between the numbers of the passengers saved in the first, second, and third classes is due to various causes, among which the difference in the position of their quarters and the fact that many of the third-class passengers were foreigners are perhaps the most important. Of the Irish emigrants in the third class, a large proportion was saved. The disproportion was certainly not due to any discrimination by the officers or crew in assisting the passengers to the boats. The disproportion between the numbers of the passengers and crew saved is due to the fact that the crew, for the most part, all attended to their duties to the last, and until all the boats were gone. 22. What happened to the vessel from the happening of the casualty until she foundered? Answer. A detailed description has already been given. See pages 32, 34. 23. Where and at what time did the Titanic founder? Answer. 2:20 a.m. ship's time, April 15th. Latitude 41 degrees 46 minutes north. Longitude 50 degrees 14 minutes west. 24. A. What was the cause of the loss of the Titanic and of the loss of life which thereby ensued or occurred? B. What vessels had the opportunity of rendering assistance to the Titanic? And, if any, how was it that assistance did not reach the Titanic before the steamship Carpathia arrived? C. Was the construction of the vessel and its arrangements such as to make it difficult for any class of passenger or any portion of the crew to take full advantage of any of the existing provisions for safety? Answer. A. Collision with an iceberg and the subsequent foundering of the ship. B. The Californian. She could have reached the Titanic if she had made the attempt when she saw the first rocket. She made no attempt. C. No. 25. When the Titanic left Queenstown on or about April 11th last, was she properly constructed and adequately equipped as a passenger steamer and emigrant ship for the Atlantic service? Answer. Yes. 26. The court is invited to report upon the rules and regulations made under the Merchant Shipping Acts, 1894 to 1906, and the administration of those acts and of such rules and regulations, so far as the consideration thereof is material to this casualty, and to make any recommendations or suggestions that it may think fit, having regard to the circumstances of the casualty with a view to promoting the safety of vessels and persons at sea. Answer. An account of the Board of Trade's administration has already been given, and certain recommendations are subsequently made. Section 8. Recommendations. The following recommendations are made. They refer to foreign-going passenger and emigrant steamships. Watertight subdivision. 1. That the newly appointed bulkhead committee should inquire and report, among other matters, on the desirability and practicability of providing ships with A. a double skin carried up above the waterline, or, as an alternative, with B. a longitudinal, vertical, watertight bulkhead on each side of the ship, extending as far forward and aft as convenient, or C. with a combination of A and B. Any one of the three, A, B, and C, to be in addition to watertight transverse bulkheads. 2. That the committee should also inquire and report as to the desirability and practicability of fitting ships with A. a deck or decks at a convenient distance or distances above the waterline, which shall be watertight throughout a part or the whole of the ship's length, and should in this connection report upon B. the means by which the necessary openings in such deck or decks should be made watertight, whether by watertight doors or watertight trunks, or by any other, and what means. 3. That the committee should consider and report generally on the practicability of increasing the protection given by subdivision, the object being to secure that the ship shall remain afloat with the greatest practicable proportion of her length in free communication with the sea. 4. That when the committee has reported upon the matters before mentioned, the Board of Trade should take the report into their consideration, and to the extent to which they approve of it should seek statutory powers to enforce it in all newly built ships, but with a discretion to relax the requirements in special cases where it may seem right to them to do so. 5. That the Board of Trade should be empowered by the legislature to require the production of the designs and specifications of all ships in their early stages of construction, and to direct such amendments of the same as may be thought necessary and practicable for the safety of life at sea in ships. This should apply to all passenger-carrying ships. Lifeboats and rafts. 6. That the provision of lifeboat and raft accommodation on board such ships should be based on the number of persons intended to be carried in the ship and not upon tonnage. 7. That the question of such accommodation should be treated independently of the question of the subdivision of the ship into watertight compartments. This involves the abolition of Rule 12 of the Life-Saving Appliances Rules of 1902. 8. That the accommodation should be sufficient for all persons on board with, however, the qualification that in special cases where, in the opinion of the Board of Trade, such provision is impracticable, the requirements may be modified as the Board may think right. In order to give effect to this recommendation, changes may be necessary in the sizes and types of boats to be carried and in the method of stowing and floating them. It may also be necessary to set apart one or more of the boat decks exclusively for carrying boats and drilling the crew, and to consider the distribution of decks in relation to the passengers' quarters. These, however, are matters of detail to be settled with reference to the particular circumstance affecting the ship. 9. That all boats should be fitted with a protective continuous fender to lessen the risk of damage when being lowered in a seaway. 10. That the Board of Trade should be empowered to direct that one or more of the boats be fitted with some form of mechanical propulsion. 11. That there should be a Board of Trade regulation requiring all boat equipment under Sections 5 and 6, page 15, of the rules dated February 1902, made by the Board of Trade under Section 427, Merchant Shipping Act 1894, to be in the boats as soon as the ship leaves harbor. The sections quoted above should be amended so as to provide also that all boats and rafts should carry lamps and pyrotechnic lights for purposes of signaling. All boats should be provided with compasses and provisions, and should be very distinctly marked in such a way as to indicate plainly the number of adult persons each boat can carry when being lowered. 12. That the Board of Trade inspection of boats and life-saving appliances should be of a more searching character than hitherto. Manning the boats and boat drills. 13. That in cases where the deckhands are not sufficient to man the boats enough, other members of the crew should be men trained in boat work to make up the deficiency. These men should be required to pass a test in boat work. 14. That in view of the necessity of having on board men trained in boat work, steps should be taken to encourage the training of boys for the merchant service. 15. That the operation of Section 115 and Section 134A of the Merchant Shipping Act, 1894, should be examined with a view to amending the same so as to secure greater continuity of service than hitherto. 16. That the men who are to man the boats should have more frequent drills than hitherto. That in all ships a boat drill, a fire drill, and a watertight door drill should be held as soon as possible after leaving the original port of departure and at convenient intervals of not less than once a week during the voyage. Such drills to be recorded in the official log. 17. That the Board of Trade should be satisfied in each case before the ship leaves port that a scheme has been devised and communicated to each officer of the ship for securing an efficient working of the boats. General. 18. That every man taking a lookout in such ships should undergo a sight test at reasonable intervals. 19. That in all such ships a police system should be organized so as to secure obedience to orders and proper control and guidance of all on board in times of emergency. 20. That in all such ships there should be an installation of wireless telegraphy, and that such installation should be worked with a sufficient number of trained operators to secure a continuous service by night and day. In this connection, regard should be had to the resolutions of the International Conference on Wireless Telegraphy, recently held under the presidency of Sir H. Babington Smith. That where practicable, a silent chamber for receiving messages should form part of the installation. 21. That instruction should be given in all steamship companies' regulations that when ice is reported in or near the track, the ship should proceed in the dark hours at a moderate speed or alter her course so as to go well clear of the danger zone. 22. That the attention of masters of vessels should be drawn by the Board of Trade to the effect that under the Maritime Conventions Act, 1911, it is a misdemeanor not to go to the relief of a vessel in distress when possible to do so. 23. That the same protection as to the safety of life in the event of casualty which is afforded to emigrant ships by means of supervision and inspection should be extended to all foreign-going passenger ships. 24. That, unless already done, steps should be taken to call an international conference to consider, and as far as possible to agree upon a common line of conduct in respect of A. the subdivision of ships, B. the provision and working of life-saving appliances, C. the installation of wireless telegraphy and the method of working the same, D. the reduction of speed or the alteration of course in the vicinity of ice, and E. the use of searchlights. Mersey, Wreck Commissioner. We concur. Arthur Goff Calthorpe, A.W. Clark, F.C.A. Lyon, J.H. Biles, Edward C. Chaston, Assessors, July 30th, 1912.